Hey guys, Probo1701 here, and today we're going to talk about Doctor Who's speeches. Now, everybody has their favorite Doctor Who speech. There have been several of them over the years that have just been amazing in the classic series and in the modern series. But what I want to talk about today is if you have a speech that no one ever really talks about, kind of a forgotten great speech. You know, everybody remembers, like, Capaldi's Zygon inversion speech, Capaldi's I do what I do because it's right speech. Genesis of the Daleks. Do I have the right speech? Tom Baker's Homo sapiens speech from Ark in Space. The first Doctor's, one day I will come back speech. Matt Smith, several of his speeches, like from Pandora Opens and all that. There's a lot of very famous Doctor speeches, and a lot of different Doctors have them. But what I want is that speech that you don't hear about as much. Like, there's a couple of them, like, that you could mention here. I really like Collins Baker's speech about the Time Lords, about, I have battled against evil, against power mad conspirators. That's a great one. I also like Collins' speech about how the universe coalesces, reforms, other planets, other worlds, which I think is from Mysterious Planet, if I remember correctly. Those are both really good speeches. But the one that I want to focus on today is actually a Seventh Doctor speech from the end of Battlefield. Because I like Battlefield. I think it's a really good story, a really solid script. The execution lets it down in some places, but it's also really good in others. Especially the creature design at the end. For a classic Who, that's amazing. Even by today's standards, it's pretty amazing, actually. But there is a speech, the speech that the Doctor gives to Morgaine at the end when they're fighting over control of the missile is really, really good. It's always stuck in my mind that I never hear anybody talk about this one. I never quite remember why. And part of that is I did rewatch it several times before doing this video, and I actually did look up the speech so I can say it. But I feel like it doesn't get the credit it deserves, and then we'll go into the whys of that in a minute. But first, I want to actually read you the speech that I'm talking about here, because I do think it's a great, well-written speech. It's, all over the world, fools are poised, ready to let death fly. No, here we go. Let me start over. Got the camera in front of me, and now I can't hardly focus on what I'm doing. So, all over the world, fools are poised, ready to let death fly. Machines of death, Morgaine, screaming from above, light brighter than the sun. Not a war between armies, nor a war between nations, but just death, death gone mad. A child looks up into the sky, his eyes turn to cinders. No more tears, only ashes. Is this war? Or is this honor? Is this war? Are these the weapons you would use? Tell me. It's a really good speech. Let me go over it again a little slower so I can actually let the words sink in, especially since my handwriting is awful. So I stumble over some of it. All over the world, fools are poised, ready to let death fly. Machines of death, Morgaine, screaming from above, light brighter than the sun. Not a war between armies, nor a war between nations, but just death, death gone mad. A child looks up into the sky, his eyes turn to cinders. Wow. No more tears, only ashes. So the kid is crying ashes because his eyes have turned to cinders. That creepy Doctor Who stuff there. Is this honor? Is this war? Are these the weapons you would use? Tell me. Keeping in mind that if you've seen Battlefield, you know Morgaine is a character of honor. You see this all throughout the story, so he is appealing to her honor, which, of course, if you've seen the story, you know this does work, and she does cancel the countdown. But that is a very graphic speech. It's like that apocalypse scene in Terminator 2, which is visually terrifying and really well executed. That's like that in verbal form here. Just, it mentions death a lot. Machines of death screaming from above, light brighter than the sun. Talks about not a war between armies or a war between nations, but just death, death gone mad. And then it switches to a child looks up into the sky, his eyes turn to cinders. great choice of word there. Cinders. No more tears, only ashes. You know, is this honor? Is this war? Is this the weapons you would use? Tell me. Personally, I don't like the tell me at the end. It seems out of place. I think I would have said, tell me, are these the weapons you would use? Or just left the tell me off completely. But the actual way it is written is phenomenal. That is a beautiful speech. I would love to have heard Capaldi with this speech. Because that man can give a speech like nobody's business. But, like, I would love to see at a fan convention, like, a fan have him read this speech. Because that, that would be wonderful. I think a lot of the doctors could do this speech well. I wonder why this speech isn't as well remembered as a lot of others. And I wonder if part of it is because of the execution. Because I do think the execution of this scene lets the story down a bit. And what we're going to do now is I actually have it pulled up on YouTube right now. I'm going to turn the camera around and we're going to actually watch the scene. And then we're going to discuss it. Because some of you might not have watched it for a minute. You know, it might have been a while since you've seen it. It might not be fresh on your mind. I had to rewatch it several times because there are some issues I have with the execution of the scene that I would like to get y'all's thoughts on. So we're going to turn the camera here. And I do have some lightsabers mounted up on the wall there. Now we're going to pull this a little closer. And then we're going to see what y'all think.
Merlin. Is it? Not while I was on a bot button. If this missile explodes, millions will die. You will die.
I shall die with honor.
All over the world, fools are poised, ready to let death fly. Machines of death, Morgaine, screaming from above. Of light brighter than the sun. Not a war between armies, nor a war between nations, but just death, death gone mad. The child looks up into the sky, his eyes turn to cinders. No more tears, only ashes. Is this honor? Is this war? Are these the weapons you would use? Tell me!
No.
Put a stop to it, Morgaine. End the madness.
So, let's sit down and get back to where we were. Now, I think Gene Marsh is amazing in this. Sylvester is good in this, but in a couple places he does things I don't like. When he says brink, he does that thing where he kind of rolls his R. Well, you know, he tends to roll his R's. And I think that feels out of place in the speech. That brink of madness, I believe, is where he does it. And it feels a little out of place. And then right at the end when he says, tell me, he goes into this false voice, as my director actually used to call it, that some people tend to do when they're trying to do screaming as an actor. Tell me! And I love Sylvester McCoy and I love him as a Seventh Doctor, but occasionally he has that habit of going into that fake voice, that false voice. It really hurts the scene. This happens earlier in Battlefield when he does this, stop! There will be no battle here! I command it! That bit, it always pull out of that scene because I know that's not his real voice. Because, like, I've seen that behind the scenes footage of when he saves Sophie's life, when he tells him, get her out of there! That's his real voice, him screaming, get her out of there! Here he goes into that fake voice, which is very obviously a fake voice. And he does that right here with that tell me at the end that kind of... And then that part where he tells her that in the madness is a little... Other than that, he does the speech pretty well. Part of my problem is the incidental music there. I've complained before about my biggest problem with Battlefield is that the incidental music is awful. Awful. Like, really, they need to do a special edition where they just completely rescore it because the incidental music is garbage. And it hurts this scene. One, I think it's a little too loud. It kind of gets in the way of the dialogue. And two, it doesn't fit the scene. Big problem is that ticking clock that sounds like somebody clicking their tongue. It's really annoying really quickly, isn't it? And having that in the background, to me, again, it kind of runs over the dialogue and takes away from it. So you have all these other noises pulling you away from the dialogue. That clock, first of all, sounds silly. And two, it should have been much more muted. Think about Capaldi's speeches. Is there even music playing during the Zygon speech? I don't even remember. Because if it is, it's very subtle and in the background. I don't even remember if there's music there. Same thing with his speech in The Dr. Falls. I don't really remember if there's music there or not. If so, it's so in the background that it just kind of amplifies the speech and doesn't really run over it. So I do have some issues with the execution because the actual written speech is phenomenally good. I really love it. It's very graphic. It gets its point across, and it's the doctor appealing to her honor, which works. And I love the little speech right after this when they talk about Arthur, too. Very beautiful. Gene Marsh really, really plays this character well. But I think one of the reasons people don't remember this speech as much as a lot of the others in Doctor Who is the execution we just saw on screen. I think there are, like I said, I think Sylvester in a couple of places is holding it back. Again, I love Sylvester McCoy. He's a great doctor. But there's a couple choices he makes there that I think were not the best idea. Most of the speech, I love how he does. He does 90% of it, I think, in a good way. The ticking clock and the music just being awful. That, and I'm not quite sure I'm convinced that they're really wrestling with the umbrella. It looks a little staged, but it's classic Who. I'm willing to overlook stuff. But I do think overall it's a really good speech. So I would like to know what you think. Let me know what you think of Battlefield. Let me know what you think of this speech. And to kind of break it down, what do you think of the actual speech, like the written speech, like as I've read it to you? And then I'm curious how your thoughts on how it's executed on screen affects it, and whether you agree kind of with what I think on it, or whether you don't. That's fine. We're all entitled to our own opinions. Either way, I'd like to know what you think of this video, so comment down below and give me your thoughts on it. I always enjoy interacting with you guys. And if there's a speech, for example, that you think doesn't give as much attention as it deserves, like maybe John's courage isn't a matter of being frightened, speech, or something from Doctor Who that you don't really hear people talk about, maybe doesn't get as much credit as you deserve as a speech, comment on that down below as well. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so you never miss out on a new video. I also have a Patreon page. If you would like to contribute to that, there is a link to that down below if you want. If you don't have a free second or two, check it out. Most importantly, though, stay safe out there, and thank you for watching.